Food is more than just what's on our plate. It's the places where it's grown, it's the people who grow it, and so much more. Join me, Janice Person, your host, on Grounded by the Farm every other week as we talk about the foods we love. Hey everybody, this is Janice, and today I'm in northwestern Arkansas. I'm at a place called the 8th Street Market. Sitting inside, I can get all kind of treats, it looks like, and I can also get some outdoor gear, which sounds lovely. But why I'm here? Talking cheese today. Oh, have mercy, the cheese talk we're going to have. We are going to talk about taste. We're going to talk about nutrition. We're going to talk about soft cheeses, hard cheeses, all cheeses. And that brings me to the first person I've ever met who actually has a title of Cheesemonger. I knew they existed, but Jessica Keahey is a cheesemonger. She is behind Sweet Freedom, and Jessica's with us today. Thanks for having me down here. This is pretty awesome.
Oh, thanks for being here. This is about as good as it gets.
And the cheese puns will be coming, people. Okay, so I have to know, at what point did you have this calling to be a cheesemonger? Because I kind of think about it, I have a family member who's an ordained minister, and I think working with cheese is an equally blessed career path.
It's true. Blessed are the cheesemakers, yes, and the cheesemongers. Yeah, it is a calling, and I think anyone who's in dairy and or cheese in the periphery of dairy will tell you that it's perhaps an obsession almost, but I feel like a lot of us fall into it in cheese. Not everyone is necessarily born into the dairy world.
You didn't fall into a vat of cheese.
So I didn't fall into the vat. Maybe metaphorically, I did emotionally, mentally.
So what did you study? What did you do to get you on this path?
Yeah. So I actually studied engineering, and I was a civil engineer, consulting engineer for a long time, and it was not my calling.
That is not a dotted line to cheese.
I knew it. Right. I know. It's very where's this story going? But I knew I wanted to do something else, and I was an avid home cook, and I really liked making things and fermenting things and eating things and feeding people, and that was kind of what brought me joy. So I thought, how can I harness this into something that I could maybe actually make a career out of? And lo and behold, I would go home and think about how that could happen. And really, there wasn't a lot of cheese making action or just cheese action in Arkansas at the time. This is 2012. And so I realized that this could be a path. I was going to have to carve it out and kind of create it myself if I was going to do it. And so lo and behold, years later, here we are, 2018, and I opened here at the 8th Street Market for the brick and mortar, but it was a long and winding path kind of in those years in between. I started out actually making cheese, which is definitely a labor of love, and I traveled all over the United States and a little out to learn how to make cheese. Yeah. Because there weren't a lot of educational opportunities here to really just dive in.
I'm going to guess the Pacific Coast, the Northeast, Wisconsin.
Yeah, especially Vermont. Tons of artisan cheese up in Vermont. I mean, you can't throw a piece of Havarti without hitting a cheesemaker up there. But it's amazing how many more people in the Midwest have found a love of cheese, and it's not just the big cheddars anymore. Absolutely, yes. And so I kind of took a little cheese quest trip around the United States, and we did kind of focus on actually the South and the Midwest. Yeah, and just met a lot of folks. Cheese people are the best people, is what we like to say in the industry. They're so kind, and they just, they open their barn doors to me and their cheese creamery doors. And I got to go in and really learn a lot. And when I came back, I realized I probably wasn't going to financially be able to make cheese without going immediately bankrupt. And so the business plan was always kind of part two, part one, make cheese, part two, to actually sell the cheese to the humans here in Northwest Arkansas. And I thought, well, I don't have to make the cheese to sell cheese, so let's just do that. And here we are a couple of years later. But I actually, in between two, there's a big difference between cheese making and cheesemongering. And so I went and did quite a few quite a few educational things to feel good about.
And I guess it's ongoing, right?
Oh, always.
So we actually have met a couple of times. Once was online. Both were events hosted by Midwest Dairy, and they're sponsoring this episode, which is like crazy awesome. Midwest Dairy works with farmers around the Midwest, and they've had you out with farms, and they introduced me to your cheese shop, which thereby introduced me to cheeses made in my home state. So tell me, how do you find new cool cheeses, right? Because anybody can go to a grocery store any day and we can get the same yellow cheddars and things, right? But sometimes it's fun to play with something different on a charcuterie board or a grilled cheese sandwich or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a great question because cheese is a staple food. And I mean, dairy is a staple food, but cheese is a staple food. We've been making it for a long time as humans and enjoying it for a long time. And I think that all cheeses have a great application, whether if it is kind of your block of cheddar that's going in your, tater tot casserole for, 15,000 people, or if it's going to be, fine cheese on, as you said, a charcuterie board that you're going to enjoy. Ashley enjoying on her fancy lake. You're gonna have to cut this part. What was that? You'll have to talk about this in the enjoyment section. Your floating charcuterie board. It's pretty exciting.
She's getting us to Ashley Anderson, who's sitting here with us, and you'll hear more from Ashley in a bit.
So good. But yes, cheese is a staple food, and it really, I like to say that there's cheese for everyone. So there's strong cheese and mild cheese and cheese that's, extremely affordable and cheese that's extremely expensive.
Right.
But there's really something for everyone, I think, even the lactose intolerant. And it's sometimes, I think, overwhelming when people step up and they see all these cheeses and they do ask us those questions of like, where on earth do you find all these? And and we do work very hard to, I think, have a really good mix of cheeses that are available for everyone, and also different kind of cheese varieties and types that fit different categories. And some of that is going out and meeting the cheesemakers and seeing what they have. And we did a lot of that, especially if we work direct with cheesemakers. We want to put eyes on their farm and their food safety protocols and taste their cheeses, and that's so much fun. And then also going to like trade shows and such where we get to roll around in tons of cheese, like at the American Cheese Society Awards, and
get me on that
great,
list,
right? Yeah,
so get me on that list.
Absolutely. So we do sample a lot of cheese, and sometimes we just take a shot where we bring in cheese and see like, what is this? Wait, let's get a wheel and eat it. Okay,
so when I met you, it was during the dark days of COVID where everybody was in stay-at-home mode. And it was, and magically a box of cheese arrived to my home. It was as if the gods said, today is a good day, right? And we had this mixture of cheeses that, again, it was with Midwest Dairy. And I still, like, 2.5, 3 years, I don't even know how many years later, I still have the top to one of those cheeses on my counter, because every time I go near a shop that's going to have cheeses, I want to look and see if they have that one.
Oh, that's so exciting.
The milk and honey from Edgewood.
We have it. We have it here today.
It's a good thing, because I brought everything in my being with the car, with ice and all things, so I can take some home, because I've craved that cheese. But really, to me, it's amazing to think that there are small cheese making places in Missouri and Kansas and Nebraska and Iowa. And I remember there were cheeses from most of the Midwestern states and a wide range of flavor profiles. So when you start thinking about a charcuterie board, how do you start thinking about what to put on that and sort of what flavors you want to combine and what textures you're looking for? I'm sure you're better at it than me, and I just want you to tell me how you do those beautiful things on your website, which people should look at your Instagram. Sweet Freedom Cheese, I think is what it is.
That's it.
And they should look at it and they'll go, whoa, and then they're going to want to come through here when they go to Crystal Bridges or somewhere. They're just going to want to stop by. You can get one to go. Call in early. But tell me how you do those charcuterie boards.
Yeah. So the first thing is how much cheese do you need? And that's usually the first question we ask.
Ratio of cheese to other things?
Or how many people are you feeding?
Okay.
You know, if it's just you, or if it's you want to eat cheese once or twice, or you really like cheese, or it's for after dinner perhaps, we can help kind of guide you on that. But typically we say an ounce of cheese per person, and then we kind of start, which cheeses are we going from there. If you are consuming lots of other food and the cheese is just a small portion, or maybe you're having it after dinner, or it was a light snack, maybe there's not a lot of big cheese eaters. But if you're listening to this podcast, I have a feeling you're gonna want to lean on the higher end of that. You could maybe cut that down just a little bit to maybe 3/4 of an ounce or even half an ounce. But we usually say 1 ounce per cheese per person, and then we say anywhere from 3 to 5 cheeses. If you get kind of beyond 5 on your cheese and charcuterie board, it's confusing. It's confusing.
You can't figure
People
out
get
what
confused. It is. Yeah, and I think also if you're eating 1 ounce per cheese, that's 5 ounces of cheese, which is plenty, by the way. If you think about, the blocks in the store we were talking about earlier, those are typically 8 ounces. So this is like a little more than half a block of cheese. If you want to kind of visualize how much cheese that is.
I didn't need to visualize that because I like to just be able to eat it without thinking about how much I've eaten.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that's plenty. And so definitely no more than 5. I know people are enthusiastic sometimes.
So how do you pick the mixture of cheeses then?
And then we usually ask what people kind of tend to like in the first place. Okay. So we're set up as a cut to order shop, which means people come and they can try things before they buy. So it's an interesting model.
I'm staying for a while today.
Where you can, say, I don't know. And then we can start to kind of work with you about what you flavors, do like. And then you will find out because, we're big on everyone going home with something that they love. We don't want to send you home with something and you open it and think, oh, I don't really like this cheese and I spent this hard-earned money on it. We want you to take it home and know that you're going to love it and then come back and say, boy, I love that Prairie Breeze cheddar. Give me something different this time that's maybe around that. And it's like a relationship with a hairstylist where you get to know your customers and what they like and what they don't like and kind of let them explore a little bit, which is really fun.
So where are we on aged cheeses versus fresher cheeses?
Yeah. So if I were putting together a board and someone said, I don't really have any preferences, what we typically do is a variety. Like you said, we would do maybe a soft cheese, a hard cheese, or something in between. We might do, a plainer style cheese, some flavored cheeses, and just kind of work from there. But typically it's nice to have a variety of textures. Yep. Also a variety, we eat with our eyes too. And so a variety of maybe colors and, some cheeses have external mold and internal mold, and that's normal. It's delicious and we encourage people to eat them. But, again, we just find out what our customers really enjoy and then work out from there. Sometimes people come in and they say, boy, I just want 4 cheddars, and that's what I'm here for, and that's great. No judgment. We got some great cheddar.
They want. That's great.
Absolutely.
They're going to be happy with it. So how do you pick all the other stuff to go on that charcuterie board? Because it's important.
Yeah, we definitely have what I call like our magic formula. So again, 3 to 5 cheeses, and then charcuterie is meat. So charcuterie has been used in a lot of different terminologies now, very incorrectly.
They have a French fry board.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
They'll call it a charcuterie, and it's a French fry board.
Right,
it's
or a hot cocoa board, and it's a charcuterie board. So charcuterie is a French word that actually does mean kind of charred or cooked meat. And so technically, if you have a charcuterie board, it's a meat board. And we do also have a cured meat section, salamis and, jamons and such. Yes, etc. So
they can go to Broadbent's Country Ham.
Oh, yeah? Okay. Oh, yeah. Country ham. Really great. We actually have a local producer, too, that we use on our grilled cheese. You'll have to try one.
Okay.
Really yum. So when people walk in and they say, oh, why does it smell so good? As soon as we put first customer, we put a grilled cheese on the grill, it's going to make this interview a lot harder because everyone's going to be really hungry.
I love it.
Yes. But I always say it's the ham and the real butter. That's what you're smelling. But anyways, I'm off track. Sorry.
So besides meats and cheeses.
Besides meats and cheeses. So we say, 1 or 2 meats. It's, again, they're more concentrated. And so they're a little saltier whenever you're having cured meats. It's a little dabble-do. And other than that, we say, fresh fruit and vegetables aplenty, as much as you want, whatever's in your crisper drawer.
Color.
It does, absolutely, and kind of rounds it out. We also do pickled items, and so it doesn't have to be pickles per se. We have pickled Brussels sprouts and olives and pickled okra and just whatever, but the acid tends to cut through the fattiness of the cheese and the cured meats.
You're getting right to that, like what works and why.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, the why was in my notes. But that acid is a key component. Yes,
it helps. It helps kind of clear your palate so that you will want to go in for another bite, like you're refreshed. You can get palate fatigue if you eat too much cheese or anything that's really heavy, right? Like heavy foods.
That's why people put grapes on the board and things
absolutely.
like that too.
It is
lets
refreshing.
You cleanse your palate a little bit.
And refreshing. Absolutely. And then we also do, aside from kind of pickled items, crunchy things for texture, because most cheeses tend to be, even hard cheeses, will have a nice kind of creamy mouthfeel to them. And sometimes those crunchy crystals, the little tyrosine crystals.
Oh, yeah.
But we do like to have a little bit of saltiness and texture. They could be anything from nuts to, I've seen people do even potato chips, which I think is really fun. So it doesn't have to be highbrow. It can be wherever you want it to be, whatever's
I do like nuts
in your
on
pantry.
there, though, like almonds, pecans, things like that.
Yeah. A lot of cheeses, especially aged cheeses, have that nuttiness to them in the flavor profile. And so there's different ways that you can pick things, and this goes with beverage pairing too, is you can either have a complementary pairing where it's really on the nose. This cheese tastes nutty. Great, we're going to put nuts with it. Or you can have a contrasting pairing. Like this cheese is very heavy and perhaps fatty. I'm going to put some pickles with it to, again, cut that fat. So that's kind of contrasting. And you can kind of take that forward. Some people tend to be in group A and some people tend to be in group B. And so kind of once you find out which of those you are, then you can start kind of picking your pairings with that. And there's a really easy thought experiment to do with this. So group A likes contrasting pairings. And so you can think about this. If you are presented, don't think about the season or how hot or how cold you are right now, but just you're presented with two glasses right in front of you. One is lemonade and one is chocolate milk. Which would you pick? Just out of instinct.
All right, I'd go with the lemonade.
Oh, what about you?
I'm betting Ashley's going to go with something else.
Or it could be regular milk.
I'm going to go with chocolate milk.
Chocolate milk. I know, me too. So we're in group B, which is the complementary pairings. So you will tend to, and it's not always 100% here.
I'm a conflict girl.
It's true. It's always like 50-50. So no surprise here. But you in group A, liking the contrasting pairings, probably tend to like fresher, crunchier, more like zippy things. So like,
I do like zippy
things. Yeah. I'm going to say like mustards and vinaigrettes over like mayonnaise and yeah.
Keep the mayonnaise as far from me as you can.
See?
On
the nose.
On the mayonnaise.
So I know, me too. Yes. So we I bet you would tend to like, again, like lighter beverages.
We are in the 8th Street Market. So if you hear weird things in the background, it's because the shops are opening.
Yeah, all the delicious smells will start to be smelling soon. We will like things that are heavier, like sauces and red wines, right? And maybe
I love red wines.
Okay, all right. Well, you can be in our camp as well. So hot coffee, those sorts of beverages.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so that means we tend to like those complementary pairings together, on the nose. And you like a little conflict.
But if I'm making a charcuterie board for all of us, I'd like a little bit of both.
Absolutely. Yes. And then people can kind of experiment around. So in addition to the pickled and the crunchy and the vegetables, we also like to have condiments. I love to put mustards or jams, or you can get weird with some chutneys.
I hate to tell people, but once again, you gave like a pineapple jalapeno jam, was it?
Yep. Deb's.
Hello.
Pineapple. Yes.
Whoa. Have mercy. I'll be buying some of that today, too.
Local producer here in
Northwest
Arkansas.
It was incredible.
It's really good. Yeah, we have it also on some of our sandwiches, too. We love to play around with that.
Bacon jam. I love bacon jam.
Absolutely.
I love all the jams. Fig preserves. You put whatever you want to on there. It's okay with me.
Yeah.
But I like it in small amounts with cheese with something crunchy or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
I really find with pairings, it is kind of a trifecta that'll bring it together. Like you have a great beverage, right? We're in the red wine camp. So, great red wine, you have this great cheese. And then if you have maybe a little jam on top, it'll just bring it all together. It's amazing. And then kind of all those things together, last but not least, we like to have a vehicle. I mean, you don't have to have a vehicle to put cheese in your mouth, but sometimes you might need a cracker or a piece of bread. And usually we say if you are maybe trying cheese for the first time, go with something that's a little plainer. Don't go with, the strongest, like rye, exactly. Yeah, covered in truffle oil and sesames, because then that's what you're going to taste, right? You're not going to taste the cheese itself. So try the cheese first, maybe by itself, and then try it with something a little plainer crackers. But we give suggestions all the time because people get really hung up on, what kind of cracker is the best cracker? But that, I think, just harkens back to
oyster crackers.
The whole I think mantra that I have about this is eat what you enjoy. If you don't like pickled items or you don't like soft cheeses, it's totally fine. This is your palate and your enjoyment.
I don't think we could talk about cheese enough to get it out of our systems.
Absolutely not.
But I do want to talk about, you mentioned lactose.
Yeah.
Free cheeses or low lactose cheeses. And this is a perfect place for Ashley to jump in. Ashley is a registered dietitian and she works with Midwest Dairy. Am I right? Ashley Anderson.
Yes, I do. I've been working for Midwest Dairy for over 10 years now.
I love talking to registered dietitians. I think a lot of people don't understand how registered dietitians can help you. I think they think people are going to be really focused down on exactly trying to make you eat only the healthiest thing if they're a registered dietitian. But I happen to know you really like cheese.
Oh, I love cheese.
And you also like red wine. We've now understood. So you're an enjoyment person too, as well as a nutrition person. And that's the way most of my RD friends are.
Absolutely. Food can't be good nutrition if you don't consume it, right? Like if it's going into the trash can, it's not doing my body a bit of good. So I believe you have to enjoy food. And that's why I'm a dietitian. It's not just because I'm passionate about health and wellness, but I'm passionate about good food.
Lactose is one of those things that occasionally makes people a little bit wary of cheeses and all dairy products, right?
Absolutely. Working with dairy, I get that question a lot from people who are lactose intolerant. And they feel that that just because you're lactose intolerant, you don't get to enjoy dairy. And it's quite the opposite, actually.
I have some problems when lactose gets too far along. I eat all the cheeses. Burrata, I have to take a small amount of, because it's got that creamy center, right? Mm-hmm. So the taste of it is amazing, but I have to like small amounts because it has more lactose in it.
Yes. So some of your harder cheeses are going to be actually naturally low in lactose. So if you think about your cheddar, Colby, even mozzarella, Swiss, those cheeses are all really good choices if you're lactose intolerant because they are so naturally low in lactose.
Okay. And then on the other end are some that maybe smaller amounts are better for people that have problems with lactose. And those would normally be a fresher, creamier cheese. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. You're spot on, Janice.
Well, because I have the problem, right? Like I want to eat all the cheeses, and I do, but I only eat so much of some of the cheeses.
And even exactly, that's a perfect point, that even if you have a cheese that has a little higher lactose in it, if you're eating that alongside with other food items so that it helps kind of delay the absorption, gives your gut enough time to kind of process that too will help. Or as opposed to sitting down and trying that cheese by itself. If you're eating it with other food items, it's going to give your body a little bit more time.
I think our bodies actually have this with a lot of different foods, especially foods that we don't eat a lot of routinely. When I go home to Memphis, I eat way too much pork because there's so much pork everywhere you go. And my body goes, whoa, wait a minute, baby. Stop it on the pork for a bit. And it's the same thing with lactose, but it's like something that's in dairy automatically. It's not like anybody's adding lactose to dairy products.
No, lactose is naturally occurring in all milks. And so cow's milk is not any different. And what happens sometimes if you've not been in checking out the dairy case, if you're lactose intolerant, if you haven't been to the dairy case in a while because you're afraid like, I can't really tolerate that well, check it out because there's a lot of products on the market right now that are...
I'll tell you. I love the ultra filtered milks because I can drink milk again. So I do like chocolate milk, but if I'm choosing on a regular basis, I will way more often go with the lemonade because
Yeah. So there's a lot of milk on the market now that because of the filtration process, it has the lactose removed,
and it's high protein.
And it's high protein. And
Love
it's creamy.
protein.
Yes. So the other option is you can have milk that actually has lactase added to it, which is the enzyme that helps digest lactose.
Oh.
So you have the other.
Isn't that tricky?
Yeah. So you can go either way.
I love it. I seriously could eat it all day. So do you think about cheeses as like high protein cheeses, Jessica?
Absolutely. Yeah, cheese is an excellent protein source.
Do they vary?
They do a little bit, and it's more about the moisture content. So let's do a little mathy thought experiment.
Oh, God.
So if you have a really moist, wet, goopy triple cream brie, you think, boy, that's a really fatty cheese, right? Maybe, sort of, but if you're thinking about in terms of concentration, like ounce per ounce, because again, we're thinking 1 ounce per cheese per person, that's really a lot of water in that's still there. So milk is 87.5-ish, give or take a little bit, % water, and then the rest of that is milk solids. And so we're retaining some of that moisture in the cheese making process to make that style of cheese. So, water has 0 calories to it, but also, 0 fat, 0 protein in that water component. So if you take, over here, some Parmesan, let's say, or a harder cheddar, it's very firm, a lot less moisture content in that. And so kind of ounce per ounce, you're actually going to have more concentration of those proteins.
Okay.
So proteins and fats, the percent, for each individual cow is going to be different. What they're eating, it's going to be different. Time of year, breeds, etc. But within a kind of narrow window. It's not going to be 1% to 95%. It's in a very narrow window there. It's more about the cheese making process and how they concentrate that down. So again, if you take that ounce of that really goopy mozzarella or brie, and then that ounce of that very hard Parmesan or cheddar, you're actually going to have more protein in that cheddar because it's more concentrated down. There's less moisture there. Also more calories too, because it's a concentrated food. And you can think about it in terms of that. So almost like density.
I like that. It's a dense.
Yes,
it's a nutrition dense,
nutritious food.
So what all am I getting in my cheeses, Ashley?
So cheese is an excellent source of protein, as Jessica mentioned, but it's also a good source of calcium and phosphorus, really important for healthy bones. The protein really good for strong muscles. So cheese really is a great way. Not only is it delicious, but it's very nutritious for you as well.
Yeah.
And it pairs so nicely. When you're talking about the charcuterie board, it pairs so nicely with fruits, with vegetables, with whole grains.
So tell me about the floating charcuterie boards that you make, because my guess is that's more like. So not everybody makes a board that's on the level that Jessica makes, right?
No, I'm always intimidated when I look at Jessica's boards.
Oh, don't be intimidated. No.
Good.
No.
You tell me, because you also have kids.
Yes, I do.
So how do you sort of put those things together?
Well, I take whatever I happen to have in my refrigerator, I put it on a board and call it a charcuterie board.
Very good. I love it.
So I grab whatever crackers are in my cabinet. I always have an assortment of cheeses. Cheese is my favorite dairy product. And then whatever fruits, vegetables, and meats that I have available.
Only recently did I learn that if you really thinly slice country ham, it's like prosciutto. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that's why I've always loved country ham. I just didn't know it.
So the floating charcuterie board, my daughter-in-law actually, we were what I call lolling in the lake. We were floating in the lake with an adult beverage in our hand, really enjoying, soaking up sunshine, having a good time.
Could be in the pool for others.
Yes. And so she goes, she looks at this raft that was sitting beside me, and she goes, I think we could put a charcuterie board on that. So we get out of the water, we run inside, and we throw everything on a board, and we come back out. We loll in the lake with our wine and our charcuterie board, and it was amazing.
I'm sure you stayed hydrated, too. You had water.
We did. But
yes.
We didn't drink the lake water.
Responsible charcuterie. Can I make that a verb?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So can you tell me, in the world of food safety and cheeses, so we know there's some things when you're making cheeses that could impact food safety, but like leaving it out on the lake for how long? Do you ever put it back in the refrigerator?
Well, we ate it all very quickly.
Okay, good.
So Jessica actually probably knows.
Yeah, I do. So we recommend also just from a quality standpoint, take out only as much cheese from your fridge that you're going to possibly eat.
Yeah.
Because if you take the cheese in and out, then there's a little bit of temperature fluctuation that happens there. You can lose a little bit of butter fat, and then just in terms of quality, it's not as great. It can dry out, it can crumble. So just slice what you need. Again, that ounce per cheese per person. Put it on your floating or not buoyant charcuterie board, and that's great. But I would say from a federal standpoint, from what the Arkansas Department of Health here would say, and what we tell our customers is 4 hours outside of refrigeration. So that's what we abide by. But again, I would say minimize that as much as possible if you're out on a lake, perhaps. However, we do also tell people. People worry a lot, like, oh, is it okay if I walk around with this for 30 minutes? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You can fly with it.
It's not like some of the other things that you have to worry about bacteria fast.
Yes, and it's better if you leave your cheeses out.
Let it
I
get
would say
room
at least
temperature.
30 minutes, yes, before you consume them, because just like anything with I say like your finest box wine, right? If you want to maybe not be able to smell or taste some of the things that are not desirable in a food or beverage, make it really cold, because we can't smell or taste things as well. It's about the molecules, moving around. So those volatile organic compounds, won't come up to your nose as easy. And so you won't be able to taste them.
Cheese is fermented, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
It doesn't continue to ferment so much when it's in your refrigerator.
That's true. Yes, the temperature's a little too cold. Yes. But if you take it out and it warms up, those molecules start to get excited and move around. You can smell things better, taste things better.
Okay.
And that goes for absolutely everything. So there's kind of appropriate temperatures. But room temperature, if you can bear it.
And I know I have a tendency to like harder cheeses. And I know from my experience coming up many times to see you, Jessica, and buy cheeses and transporting back to Central Arkansas, that you assure me the harder cheeses are okay being left not on ice for a short period of time.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah. So FDA, Federal Food Code, talks about water activity, and that's a little bit different concept from moisture content. But basically, if a cheese or a food product, whatever it is very, very, very dry, or has a certain combination of that dryness and that water activity and an acidity level, then pathogens, bacteria, they're not going to want to live in that environment.
This is what gets me back, like a thing of burrata. It's sold in water, or sometimes mozzarella is sold in water.
Yep.
And if you open the sealed container, you need to eat it.
Yes, absolutely.
Like 24 hours or something, I think is
and some of that's in
probably
terms
a guideline.
Quality, more than food safety. But yes, absolutely.
But tell me how to store cheeses, other than the fact that now my refrigerator has the big drawer, right? Like the massive drawer. It used to be a smaller, I couldn't see what all is down in there. Now I've got the big, huge cheese drawer.
Love it.
I assume that just does it well. But sometimes you wrap cheeses in paper.
Yeah. So
sometimes plastics.
What we do here, so if you come to our counter and we cut to order a piece of cheese for you, then we wrap it in a specially designed cheese paper that is permeable. It doesn't seem like it, but there's some micro holes in it that allow the cheese to breathe. Because cheese is, as you know,
active.
It's active. It's a fermentation product, and we need to let some of that off gas while also not retaining moisture up against the cheese. And the worst thing that you can do is wrap it in plastic wrap, and that will essentially kind of suffocate the cheese, and it'll make moisture sit in between the cheese and that plastic wrap, which will cause spoilage faster. So we say, if you don't have fancy cheese paper, that's totally fine. No big deal. You can wrap it up in wax paper or parchment paper and then put it in maybe a Tupperware, or then you can put it in a Ziploc.
Okay.
Or then you can put plastic wrap over it. But just something kind of in between that and the cheese.
That's weird, because like cheese at the grocery store is so frequently.
Yes. So it's vacuum sealed. It's a little bit different process. So they use either modified air potential or a vacuum process.
She knows so much about cheese.
Done in a cheese manufacturing facility. Yes, so that there's no mold potential happening. But there's maybe some mold potential in the back of your fridge. So occasionally you might see a little bit of mold on your cheese, and that typically, use your judgment. When in doubt, throw it out. But if it's a hard cheese and maybe you forgot that piece of cheddar in your fridge for the last 3 months and there's a little bit of mold because maybe you had some mold.
My mom always told me cut it off.
Cut it off. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Food safety queen over here telling you. Yeah. The rule of thumb is just maybe a quarter of an inch. If that,
a little
just slice
further
that
in
off.
from the mold, yeah.
Absolutely, and that's it. I know a lot of people get real upset by this concept. If there's mold on it, toss it away. But cheese is it's designed to be a moldy food. It's a
Country
fermented
ham is
food.
too.
That's fair.
like some molds are good molds,
Absolutely.
and other molds are bad molds, and
yes,
it's important to
it is very important to differentiate between that as well.
I wouldn't eat something that's been in a refrigerator for 5 years,
right? Yeah,
creating all kinds of molds. But a generally clean refrigerator, some cheese you bought 2 months ago, you forgot about it after you opened it.
Yep. Cheese wants to propagate mold. It just does. And mold wants to live on cheese because it's yummy. So typically it's no problem in terms of food safety for hard cheeses. Now, if you have your burrata and you maybe forgot it, definitely toss that. Yeah. If you see anything on squishy, moist cheeses, it doesn't have that same water activity level that is acceptable.
And is that why some of them have the rinds that like a brie is like...
Yeah, so rinds actually serve a lot of purposes. They create a certain cheese variety type, so you can have, external or internal molding, and a lot of that has to do with the place where that cheese was developed. So maybe, at a cave in France, there was a certain kind of mold, and now we propagate it deliberately in, very clean cheese manufacturing facilities where we have purchased that, mold from a culture house that comes in sealed, very sanitary packets. But once upon a time, it was out in the wild, the terroir of France, and that's where those cheese developed. And so we have, thousands of cheeses today available to us that we differentiate in different types. So fresh cheeses, we call them bloomy rinds, which have those little white velvety coats on them. Kind of soft ripened cheeses fall in that category. And then as we work our way to the harder cheeses, we go from kind of semi-firm to extra firm. And then we have some kind of weirdos in there too, wash-drying cheeses developed by, monks and monasteries in Europe, and where they took maybe some leftover beer and washed the cheeses with it just because, why not?
Why not?
What the heck? And those are the ones that kind of smell like your socks. And then, blue cheeses too, which I realize are not for everybody, but are really delicious.
I have been to some creameries that do blue cheese, and I think blue cheese is like some other products where it gets a bad rep because you've had bad blue cheese products.
Or strong blue cheeses. Sometimes you need like a gateway.
Like you didn't get the right
ones.
Like
a gateway blue. Yeah. Something that's a little milder
and
maybe.
And some of those dressings aren't necessarily actually...
Some blues can be very astringent, and it's hard to start, I think, as a cheese lover at that. So as a child...
Maybe not for young children
Yes,
usually.
I did not like blue cheese. But then I studied cheese making, and I ate a lot of blue cheese, and then it really grew on me. And so blues... a lot of times where you can really just enjoy that cheddar by itself, maybe some pickles and some mustard, make it really amazing.
Yeah.
Blues, a lot of times, are difficult, I think, for people to just eat hunks of, although there's certainly some that I do just by themselves with a cracker. But you can partner with certain things that make them really very palatable. So I like to, even though I'm firmly over here in the complimentary camp, I will say for blues, we really, especially here in America, we like salty and sweet together. So you can think about like chocolate covered bacon and caramel and
even
popcorn.
kettle corn.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
same
all
brain
of it.
here. So if you take a blue cheese that's a little salty, a little strong, and then pair it with maybe chocolate or honey or some of those fresh figs or jams, it really, really brings that astringency down and makes just a lovely pairing. Yep. So try it out.
Okay.
A little drizzle
So
of
not
honey.
everybody is going to be in northwestern Arkansas this month or this year, maybe. So how would people find small cheese shops like yours in their area to be able to get on this adventure?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a number of independent and not just independent cheese shops, but a lot of places now that are bringing cheese and charcuterie to all parts of the United States, which is really wonderful.
Even grocery stores in my neighborhood.
Restaurants. Yeah, absolutely. So if you don't have an independent cheese shop, don't think there's not great cheese maybe in your neighborhood. But the American Cheese Society, their website, they have a great listing of both cheese shops and then cheese producers, because a lot of cheese producers,
fantastic.
You can, not all of them, obviously don't show up at a farm, asking for cheese, but some of them do have farm stores where you can go and get the cheese direct, which is always best and help support, the farmers and the cheesemakers.
So now last week, when we were with Logan, and he was the one that had jerseys, and he has a really small farm. I think it's like 40 head. He's milking a small number of cows. I thought, man, he could be making cheese here, and people like me would come and pay him so much money to eat wine and cheese at his farm. Are there some of those kind of places you've been to that is like in the Midwest?
Absolutely. There's places around, and there's kind of two modes of thought too, because I would say most farms are not, or most creameries are not within, say, city limits. And so you're driving to the country.
That's okay.
Yeah, to go to the farm. And not all farms, have visitors because they're working farms.
Yep.
But there are just kind of like wineries. You can go out and enjoy a glass of wine and, sit there and see the vineyards. There are certainly some places where you can go and see the cheese making process, or just maybe buy the cheese,
or buy a sandwich
as well.
Or something like that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, but a lot of cheesemakers, they're there typically 7 days a week as the cows are being milked too, making cheese.
Does it make a difference what kind of cows usually?
So absolutely, and that gets into kind of deep dive of cheese making 401. But there, again, as we talked about earlier, there are some composition differences in the fat and the protein of certain cows. And so depending on what kind of cheese you want to make, a lot of cheesemakers will
jerseys may be better for some things.
Mix. Yes.
Guernseys may be better for something
jerseys
else.
and Guernseys, higher butterfat content, and that's suitable for specific types of cheeses.
And the Holsteins are better for
Ayrshires, that are maybe for another type of cheese, or hybrid crosses.
Yeah,
too.
Very cool.
And temperament and size sometimes come into play with that, depending on what the farmer's preferences are, and there can be things also done to the milk in terms of skimming or adding in additional cream to kind of get to that target that you're looking for.
I've seen that in a really big scale kind of.
There are certain cheeses and cheese styles that are actually required by law to be skimmed in terms of butterfat. So some Goudas, like Swiss, Emmentals, those styles. Some harder cheeses like Parmesan have to be skimmed as well because it interferes with the drainage process if you're making a really hard cheese.
So my final question, I think, will probably not be, but one of my nieces said, have her help me understand how to make a more economical charcuterie board. I mean, I love all the cheeses, right? And it can get pricey. And sometimes pricey is good, and sometimes pricey is like, not today, folks. So if you were making one that's a little more on the economical side, like you had teenagers eating that amount of cheese.
So large quantities of cheese.
What would you do? And I'm not talking about Brandon. I'm talking about Jake. No, I'm kidding. But her husband has actually been making boards recently out of wood and has been really into this. And you get really into it. It can get really...
Yeah, it certainly can. And but again, there's affordable cheeses for everybody. So I would say buy how much cheese you need. And that's, again, the advantage of a cut-to-order cheese shop if you're so lucky to have one in your vicinity, because then you can come and get exactly how much you need versus having to buy a whole block that you may or may not love and that you
And I think some grocery stores will do that
sometimes.
If they have a larger cheese counter.
Absolutely. It always never hurts to ask. So don't be intimidated if somebody's there and even if it's just a grab and go type situation, feel free to ask, hey, can you cut this piece of cheese down? Because a lot of times I over anticipate how much cheese even I can eat, but really an ounce per cheese per person, I'm telling you.
That's a really good tip. And I think, for me, I don't go to the same grocery store I normally go to for my big groceries.
Yes.
but there is one that's really good with cheeses. Yeah. And to think about it as an ounce per cheese per person.
And some of the stronger styles of cheese, like blue, people just tend to eat less blue cheese. Yeah. And so we do, again, kind of tell people to back off some of those. Yeah. So unless you really know, maybe you're the only person who's going to eat blue, we would say, knock that down a bit to half an ounce perhaps. And so again, stick to 3 to 5 cheeses. Don't go overboard. And also, I really love, there's different modes of thought. Go to a place and buy all these new things and then make a big board. Or you can have someone make a board for you. So we do that as well. If you were to buy all the things that go on our cheese and charcuterie platters, you'd be spending a lot more money. And then you'd have all these kind of leftover things too. The entire box of crackers, the whole thing of jam. And maybe that's great and that's what you want, but we can also kind of construct them for a lot less and give you the equivalent of what you're making at home.
Yeah.
But the other mode of thought too, like option 3 is what I really like what Ashley is saying too. And what I tend to do is I'll buy the cheeses, but then everything else, I'll just see what I have. What's in the crisper drawer? What vegetables do I need to eat?
And nuts are great at freezing them. Pull them out the day before, put them in smaller bags or whatever.
Yes. I'm all about, they're not being food waste for sure. And so that's what I do. What condiments do I have in my fridge? What crackers do I happen to have? Or some bread in the freezer? And then that's it. So it's a little more affordable in that way. So focus on the cheeses. But again, you can ask your friendly cheesemonger, hey, I'm looking for some affordable cheeses. And they'll definitely point you in the right direction.
It's just like wine. Yes. You can spend a lot of money or you can get something more economical.
Absolutely.
And I love that cheese is moving to that kind of realm, right? Because there was a time in my life where it was like, you had cheddar, you had American, you had mozzarella and cottage cheese, and not much else.
Right.
Easily available to everybody, right? And now it's definitely where it's a playground of cheeses, and there are a lot more small local places that are selling and a lot of places that are doing different things. So I really appreciate your being with me. Now we're going to take some time, look around the shop. I'm going to video it so that people can see some of the tips you give me as you're going through things. Do not calculate how much money I'm spending. If your
secret's safe with me.
I mean, it's just
for butter or worse.
Yeah. I knew this was coming for a while. So, Ashley and Jessica, thanks so much for being here. I'm going to make sure we give the link so that if people come to this area and they want to see if you guys are doing some classes or things like that.
Absolutely.
And Crystal Bridges is really quite close here. So
yes.
This is an easy visit when they're here for that.
And the Momentary, which is its sister museum, is literally next door to us.
That's what that is next door. I didn't even figure it out.
It's wonderful. Yeah, the whole A Street Market is just a really neat place. We're next to a brewery and a artisan chocolate shop and all these delicious food vendors. Yeah. Culinary college that's really state of the art. So it's a fun center. It's just to come and, hang out. There's always events and activities happening here.
Thank you guys so much. Everybody, if you have a cheese lover in your family, make sure they get this episode and go ahead and listen back to the episode if you missed it. The one where we were talking with dairy farmers, the Koblentzes, and then Logan Courtney. See what you learn from them as well as the cheese side. I know I always learn something every time I'm around these folks. So look forward to talking to you again in 2 weeks. Grounded by the Farm. Hit us up on the website to catch that video.